All right, we're going to get started. Good evening. Mic, no mic? I'll use the mic, okay. I just hear the echo, that's why. Thanks for being here tonight, and we want to welcome you. So my name is Dr. Mangano. Please call me Amy, principal of our middle school here. In the back, we have Mrs. Brady and Mr. Hammond, our two assistant principals. You'll meet them if you're staying for our presentation later. Professor Bruger, who you'll also meet later. And we'll be presenting tonight with Dr. Dennis, who is our director. I'm really excited about this because we've collaborated and we work together on many initiatives. This is one of them. So we're excited to talk about some changes up and coming for next year for the middle school regarding our gifted programming. So I'm going to have Dr. Dennis kick us off. Thanks.
Good evening. It's nice to meet and see all of you. As Dr. Mangano said, we've been working this year on, as this new schedule has emerged, what can we be doing differently and better for our gifted students in this new schedule? So our goal tonight is just a brief presentation to just share with you some of the changes we will be making in the fall, and then save some time for you guys to ask some questions before the big presentation begins. So just to start off, Dr. Mangano shared the team. They have their administrative team who often serve as the LEAs, our administrators at gifted meetings. So they're all there. And I also noted Mrs. Nicole Schrage, who's our supervisor of special education. She's assigned to this building. So at Erdenheim and at the middle school, she's sort of our special education administrator that's sort of there to support the teams. So you may see her at a GIEP someday as an LEA. She supports this building. And as Dr. Mangano said, we have Professor Berger, who will be our gifted teacher next year and our designated teacher, and we're going to hear from them in a few minutes also. So just briefly, what is the purpose of gifted education? So the purpose under the PA school code, all those official documents that we use to kind of support our team and our gifted services, is to make sure that we're providing appropriate, specially designed instruction to students who meet the criteria as gifted students under a Pennsylvania school code, and make sure that they're benefiting from enrichment and or acceleration of content. And our requirements are to use a variety of instructional strategies to meet those goals and individual needs of students. So that's our job here at Springfield Township, to make sure your child's gifted needs are being met. Oh, this really does come out really light with all the lights on. I'm sorry, I'll make sure that this gets posted too so everybody can really look at it in a better light. I didn't realize it would come across so dark in this space. But really, this is our previous gifted instruction, starting with the location. Gifted support services were happening out of ELA classes. So our gifted students were cluster grouped within those ELA courses, and their goals and SDIs were implemented within that setting. Staffing, we had 3 ELA teachers here in the building who were supporting those gifted students and acting as case managers, while also instructing in their ELA classes. And the individualization for students really looked like goals that were supported through the ELA curriculum and really written and geared towards what could be accomplished within that setting. So what we're doing for 26-27 is we are pulling gifted out of those ELA classes, so it won't be built into that course. And that also means that it's not going to have the conflict of the ELA standards that also need to be taught along with your child's individualized gifted needs. So we're going to pull that out and really use gifted time during the school day that'll be dedicated to your child's GIEP goals. Our staffing, we're moving from that 3-teacher model and moving to a designated gifted teacher, much like they have at Erdenheim, much like they have at Enfield. And while that seems like a reduction, they are a full-time gifted teacher, so they're not teaching ELA content at the same time that they're also working with your student on gifted goals. So this is a dedicated person who's really dedicated to the gifted program and your child's GIEPs, and it'll bring some continuity to them in the middle years. Again, much like elementary, your gifted students will get to work with that person over the course of their time here at the middle school. Oh, and then for individualization, this will allow us to really focus in more on your child's strengths in ELA and math. And what we're hoping to do over time is write some goals that are really targeted to your child. So really looking at data, looking at where your child's strengths are, and making sure that our enrichment and acceleration is really pinpointed to where those needs exist for your child. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Professor Bruger so she can share a little bit of information.
Before Professor Bruger comes up, I want to take a moment and acknowledge Corey. So I don't know how many of you are returning 7th and 8th grade families? Okay, great, thank you. So those of you that may or may not have had Corey as a 6th grade level teacher, Corey has a wonderful subset of skills in addition to being an excellent 6th grade team leader. Corey brings a host of creativity and passion for education and for students. And it's one of the things that I think I fell in love with when I first came here, because Corey is really invested in her students and watching them grow and learn, and has a ton of creativity that they bring to the table. So I'm very excited to have Corey join in this new position and go on this fun ride with us. And I think, as Dr. Dennis mentioned also, I think the beauty of this is the 3 years. So really providing, your students with someone who's going to pick them up in 6th grade and stay with them for those 3 years, which I also think is really key for that advocacy piece. So I'm going to turn it over to Professor Bruger. She's going to just speak a little bit about her own background. Thank you.
Hi, it's nice to meet everybody. I'm going to go by the slide because I will forget what I'm saying. So my name is Corey Bruger. I have 2 BAs from Susquehanna University, one in music, percussion was my major, and English, Shakespeare was my concentration. I have a master's in secondary ed from Arcadia, and I, as of next year, will be Dr. Bruger, not when you see me, but by the end of next year, will be Dr. Bruger, which is surreal. I've been teaching for 10 years, and I have run a whole bunch of different extracurriculars. Currently, I'm an advisor for the Middle School Robotics Club, and I run the high school GSA. I am extremely excited because I have a background in project-based learning, and I think that this will be a really fantastic opportunity for your students to get to do stuff that they haven't really had the opportunity to do before. I'm looking forward to working with you, and nice to meet you.
Thank you so much, Professor Bruger. We wanted to really make sure you had a chance to put a face with the name and start to kind of have that opportunity to get your students prepared. And one of the things that we would like to do before the end of the year as well is get the students together with Professor Bruger and give them a chance to ask questions, talk about the program next year, so that everybody's really walking into the fall with a really high level of comfort about how gifted support's going to happen. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of what this will actually look like for your child. So as you'll learn, if you haven't yet, that this new schedule is coming to the middle school, and you'll be hearing more about that in the next block. And so this is a sample 7th grade schedule. It'll be similar for 8th grade as well. So we're pulling that gifted time out of that ELA block. And you can see up here that it'll be in that WIN block. So in 7th grade, that happens in block 4. So students will go to lunch, and then they'll have their WIN period. Students in 6th, 7th, and 8th will be broken into 2 gifted groups so that they're small instructional models, where Professor Bruger can really work with a small group of students. And then they will go to WIN, and then the rest of their day, I'm sorry, I hit the wrong button. And then we've also added a day a week of some science-supported gifted enrichment. So we have new STEEL standards coming through, which are the new science standards in the state of Pennsylvania, very tied to math as well as ELA, a lot of reading and comprehension work that happens within the STEEL standards as well. And so we felt for our first year of changing this model, this is a good entry point for students to get some of that additional gifted time. And so we've talked with our science team, we've talked with Professor Bruger, and this will look, that science block will look a little bit different week to week. So some of that might be co-teaching with the gifted teacher and the science teacher, doing something together and extending the standards and activities. It might look like small group within that space with some enrichment activities, or it could look like some pull out from time to time, depending on that collaboration with the science team. So all in all, in the week, your student's going to get about 90 minutes of designated gifted support and time, which aligns and is actually a little bit more than what they received in that ELA block. and it's dedicated. So unlike in that ELA block where we were working on ELA standards in addition to that gifted time, this is really designated time for your child to work on that enrichment and or acceleration as needed. So as Professor Berger mentioned, how are we going to do all this? How are we going to really support gifted goals for students? Some of this will be through this project-based learning. And so Professor Berger and I have started working and will continue to work through the summer on building out modules for each marking period of the school year that focus on project-based learning that will include research and data analysis, some written expression, problem solving, so we're covering all of those math and ELA and science standards within those project-based learning activities. It's also going to support some of those career readiness skills through the collaboration, teamwork, and problem solving with peers, and also looking at that social responsibility and connectedness. So some of the things that we work on with our gifted students is perseverance. Sometimes our gifted students tend to lean toward the perfectionistic lean on the spectrum, and so how do we help them to get some resilience, really work through problems, persevere through struggle, so that'll all be built into those projects as well. And then that should say reflective, not reflexive. Reflective practices and providing some examples to students. So we'll be using these modules throughout the year to support students with their gifted goals. And again, we're giving them designated time focused on those math and ELA skills primarily, with some of the science supported. We're fostering that growth in those social, emotional, and critical thinking skills through the middle years. It's collaborative with core instructors so that we're extending learning that's happening within the core. Professor Gruber, we've built out a schedule where she has time with each grade level every week during their planning periods, so she can ensure that there's connection and continuity between the standards that are happening in the core and the enrichment that's happening in our gifted programs. And then, of course, I think most importantly for our gifted students, lots of opportunities for creativity, innovation, for them to really use their skills to extend their learning. So that's the meat, sort of like the bones of it. I'm going to go back to the schedule because I imagine that's where questions will arise. Yes, please. No, you're fine.
I just want to also mention, when we talk about the science support, our science department, coming up in May, in addition, I believe, to Professor Gruber, are all attending the STEELS conference, which I think is another great opportunity for them to get together, get immersed in what's happening with our standards, and truly start some of that planning now. Like, what are we looking at for our kids? I also think there's a lot of opportunity now that we have a dedicated person across those grade levels to really connect and collaborate with our curriculum teachers, so that if students are sitting in whatever core content they are in, how can we enrich them even further? How can we accelerate if need? Like, what can we do in those classes as the need arises? So again, I think there's a ton of opportunity here in their core content areas, and then again, it's also really important, as you all know, for the students to be together and have that time as a like-minded group to work together on some projects and things. So I think there's a lot of great flexibility in what we've been able to create and have some support for, and to truly have, as I mentioned, just that one dedicated person that's responsible for their growth and learning over their 3 years. Sorry, I just wanted to add that. So
We'll take some questions.
Are there any questions? Yes.
So right now there's levels for math, and then there's a separate class for ELA. So now going forward, will there be levels for ELA and levels for math? Or
No.
will it be just-
Right, sorry, I didn't know.
No.
And just to clarify, so ELA was never level. So it was, we were servicing students through what we called a gifted ELA class. But the class itself had a predominantly large number of gifted students. There were also students in some of our classes that had no GIPs. So ELA was never leveled the way that math was. So math will continue to be level, ELA will not be level, none of our courses are level at all.
So I do think that's a problem, because I think right now that is a reduction effectively in adjusted or focused learning. Because while I understand the ELA is officially leveled, it's also almost exclusively enriching kids or high performers, and she's working and she has to do the standards, but she's also being able to move faster through certain areas, add other programs on
still need to meet the needs of those kids, period. No matter what class they're sitting in. So call it an ELA, call it a science, call it social studies, call it a math class, we have an obligation to meet their needs. So I still feel that we need to work, whether it's Corey and that regular ed teacher have to work to meet the needs of those kids and differentiate for kids who need more. And we have kids, whether they're gifted or not, who need that differentiation. So I still think we'll be able to do that. Yes?
It's going to be more work than on top, because I've heard this from other teachers, oh, well, the child always do extensions, but I don't want my child doing extensions after school, because it's not professional.
Yeah,
I
and
agree with that. I don't think enrichment or even to all the points you're making, it's not about the volume, and it shouldn't be more work, more work, more work. That doesn't equate to deepness. I think of like an iceberg. How deep are we going with kids? Not this way, this way. So I totally agree with that kind of thought process. You can chime in, please feel free, but I think that's exactly what we're going after. And the only way to truly go, I feel like with ELA, although it might have felt like we were doing so much, we were doing this much. I feel like we have an opportunity to do that across the board now and go deeper. But you're right, it doesn't mean more work, it means depth.
And it's built into the day. So I think a lot of times what would happen, especially in your science and your social studies, is they would get, oh, you could do this, but you have to do it on your own time because we're in this class now and we're checking these boxes and going through these standards. And the speed's going to adjust based on the collective nature of the class, and then students who need more, and that's where Professor Bruger can come in to really be collaborating. That's why we built in collaboration time every week with each grade level so that they can be really working and doing that extension and tying in what's happening with that gifted to the things that are happening in that curriculum as well, and doing that deeper dive and not relying on these other periods of time or homework to get that extension. It's going to be able to happen within their school day.
So just regarding the clustering, I have two kids that are in sport one, which is seventh grade now, one is in fifth grade. And certainly over the years, I've seen that it's easier for them if there are at least some other kids in the program in their class. Not just true in elementary school, and I say that's so true. But even if you guys can't cluster all of them together, like, I would say, I would just suggest considering a good number of them together. That way, if there's group work or things like that, they're able to at least be put together at least. I would say at like a minimum, that would be preferred.
Yes.
Like, that's like, yeah.
And that is our plan, is to have them in small groups. So on the schedule, you'll see they're getting 2 days of WIN. So we're taking, let's say 7th grade, for example, there'll be 2 7th grade gifted groups. The first group will have 2 days, and the second group will have 2 days. And so we plan on grouping across those 2 teams, students in some groups so that they are seeing other students, as well as for that push and support in science. They need to be together. Professor Bruger can't be in every science class that runs across the day. So we will cluster group them, and we can look at, other cores as well. Now, math is going to still be specialized depending on, where students fall in the data and which classes they go into. So focusing in on that science and ELA block of time.
Did you help us understand why not being level in ELA?
So leveling in ELA is not really a typical or research-based practice. I think if you look at middle schools, in this area and across the state, that's not super typical. And mainly because ELA comprehension standards really at this age and moving on are like cyclical. They continue to repeat. And so that differentiation can happen within the course because those standards really aren't changing significantly. I don't know if you want to, and then in math, it's really just about that pacing. But in ELA, when you're reading a novel, you're reading the novel within a period of time. But certainly that depth can come in through some of those extensions and enrichment. I would say that's just not really a typical practice. And again, it would be unfair to categorize what was happening previously as a leveled ELA class. There really wasn't a noted difference in the standards or in the pacing. It may have felt that way with students in there, but they were not all gifted students within those courses.
I have a current sixth grader who's not gifted, seventh grader who is, and their ELA class is on the night day. So
Yes.
How many kids is that?
So again, we have about 2 groups at each grade level that are about 10 students each, and we will be most likely clustering them on teams. So Professor Kruger will be cross-teamed, meaning that she'll work with Team A and Team B, but we'll be grouping students within those 2 teams. Yes, yes, so that it allows Professor Kruger to run on a schedule and for kids to have a clear picture of this is when I will expect to see Professor Kruger and when I'll have my services.
So then, can I ask about, and I understand a little, like, using like only available Gen X terminology, like, is that effectively study hall? What is basically?
Sure, so when fall, and you'll hear more about this in the other presentation, but essentially, most schools these days are operating on a period of the day where supports and interventions take place universally so that kids don't have to miss other core content in order to get what they need. So that when period is servicing students across the continuum. So if you need intervention because you're behind in something or you don't understand something, that's available to you. If you need enrichment and additional extensions, then that's also available to you at that time without taking away from your ability to be within your core classes.
Right, but how does that actually work? Because this year even doing this comparison, it's like KSSA prep for fifth grade students, not appropriate at all. I mean, it's easy to do, causing harm or stress, but it doesn't waste time. And so it did not sound to you like it was not what we needed. It was what other kids, the other end of the community needed. We just got started the process.
You're asking a really great question. We are going into a lot of detail in WIN in our, were you at the other presentation? There was a presentation for 5th to 6th graders.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's fine. We recorded that one, but what we're working to do for our WIN is rely on our data and look at that and do exactly what you're saying. Because as Megan just said, we want our true high learners to get what they need where they need. We want the kids that truly need intervention to get what intervention is, what they need. And everybody go where they need to go and get what they need. I don't want it, personally, I don't want it to be a study hall or a dumping ground, or I don't want kids gaming. That's not the intent of what we're doing. So we here are utilizing our data to look at, we're actually currently only using our 5th grade data to be like, okay, who needs what where? And then where can we utilize our core teachers? Because those should be our people too that are delivering some of this instruction. That's also the place where Professor Kruger is pulling out those kids to be with them, so those kids get to be together in a cohort working on what they need. Because they need that time to be together and to be accelerated in whatever project or whatever's happening, you know what I mean, whatever they do.
Dr. Kruger, Professor Kruger can't be supporting the WIN on the days that they win because she'll be supporting other students gifted full out.
So she'll have 2 days with the first group and 2 days with the second group. The last day is Learning Lab Day, which would also be a time that students could come to Professor Kruger for support. So yes, she's not, correct.
Probably doing other enrichment activities that are set up in advance. And or if they're working on a project, let's just say, I'm thinking out of the box with Professor Gruber on the days where there's direct instruction with her. Then on those other 2, maybe they're working on that project that they have working on. Those are the things we are also planning right now as we speak in terms of having systems set up in place for kids to truly, so that they're not sitting like you were saying, like just sitting and going through something.
Can we take the last part? I know other parents are coming in. I also have cards if you feel like you'd like to have a follow-up conversation. I'll certainly give you my email address and my phone number on there, and we can follow up with that. Yeah, absolutely. And if you have specific concerns, like I think let Dr. Mangano know so we can plan for that and be planful about that. We're happy to customize as much as we possibly can. We know this is a bit of a change. I really do believe that dedicated gifted time is going to allow your children to dig deeper into their areas of strength. This will be our first year doing it. If we need to tweak some things, we can. If you have feedback throughout next year or at the end of the year, we're happy to take that in and take a look at how we can move things around. But again, I think giving students some designated gifted time, we're going to really be able to focus on their areas of strength and not make that rooted in just the ELA class. We can expand beyond that and look at other skill sets that your students have through the gifted lens. So I'll be in the back for a few minutes. If you'd like a card, come back, I'll give one to you so that you can contact me afterwards if you feel like you would like to have some additional conversation or you have additional questions. But we really appreciate you guys popping in early and listening to us, and I know you're gonna hear a lot more great information about the other schedule changes that are coming up.
So right after this